podcasts.
Okay, so I forgot to click recording, so we missed anyone. I missed that. Whoopsie. Anyway, we're on to the critical thinking. We were doing a bit of word history there. So I've got some questions which I've put on the Facebook page. If you want to see the questions, I've just added one question, which is number 4. All right, just in the last few minutes. But if we think about Mary's document, and we looked at it last week, and she was describing her experiences of coming out of a family, a culture that wasn't, and here's the phrase, conducive to, possibly a new word for you. It's a useful one for academic writing, IELTS and things like that. So if something is conducive to something, it encourages or helps lead to. So if we say a quiet room is conducive to study, yeah, it means quiet environment, it leads to, it creates good conditions for, that's what it means. It creates good conditions for something. If we break that word down, that duc word, ducere, to lead, and it creates, there are 12 very, very productive roots in English, and that is one of them. Duc, D-U-C, it means to lead. Education, you lead someone somewhere. Conduct, electricity, conducts, it leads, the wire conducts, it leads electricity somewhere. Yeah. So make sure, in fact, I'm going to stop and go back to here. Sorry, wrong page. I want to go back to that Etim Online. There we go. Because it's such an important route. I've spent heaps of time here. We had conducive, didn't we? That's why I had it in there. I was sitting there ready for. Okay, so something is conducive to something. Have the quality of promoting, or we can say furthering, developing something further. That might be a new, look, further as a verb. Probably haven't seen that before. You can further your career. You develop it, promote it. From 1640s, from conduce and ive, right? Now, so in this case, we have to click here on the verb. All right, look, to lead. There it is, conduct. From Latin, conducere, to lead or bring together. Con and ducere, to lead. Here we are, Proto-Indo-European again, that old language, duc, to lead. Let's go there. Because all of those words in English come, and some of those you know, look, abduct, conduct. Duke, a leader. Education, I'm just picking out the obvious ones. Produce, when you produce something, you lead something through a process. Introduce, you lead someone into something, don't you? But then we get other more complex ones you might not have come across. Whoops. Which, you see, once you understand that, then we can look at conducive, sorry. This one, important. Induce and induction. When we go further with critical thinking fairly soon, we'll probably talk about induction. Right? Something leads us to a conclusion. We say that in English. We are led to the conclusion. So induction is a particular type of thinking that leads us to a conclusion. It's often contrasted with this one, deduction or deduce. Two different methods of thinking, but they both use this word lead. So the metaphor is from certain evidence or premises, beginning points in an argument, we are led to a conclusion through induction or deduction. They are different and we need to explore that. But notice they're important. I mean, the root is important here to understand you are being led in your thinking. Subduction, if you're a geologist, when continental plates, one is led under the other, that's subduction, etc., etc. Seduction, right? You're led into a trap of some sort.
Isn't there a class, school leader or something called ducks as well?
Yeah, ducks, that's right. The ducks, DUX,
Yes.
the top, the top person in year 12, usually the ducks of the school. That's right. Probably is related. Yeah, they haven't put it in the list, but it probably is. Yeah, so that duck, you can see it usually takes DUC form, sometimes DUK. Very important to know. That's the sort of thing I mean by learning some roots. Okay, back to the text, back to the question. Here we go. Outline this is what you're going to talk about with each other, with critical thinking. So we read Mary Heath's biography, the first bit. She was talking about how her experiences were not conducive to critical thinking. There was not much encouragement, was there? There wasn't much talk about it. There wasn't much modelling of it. Your experiences, were they conducive to critical thinking or not? You know, maybe you did have someone encouraging you that sort of way, or not. Now, what is critical thinking? She's kind of describing it there. Thinking about, she's mainly focused on critical thinking about society, isn't she? And about certain cultural things. So I guess we'll interpret it that way. So describe how and why with particular relevance to, she talked about cultural disapproval. So what's your experience? Was there cultural or some kind of disapproval of expressing ideas, that were different, or not even expressing, just exploring them? Has that been, it's fairly common. Yeah. Now, we might include this as a package, 1, 2, 3, and talk for a while about it. I just thought it might be interesting for you to think about levels here. So we have our family, and she wrote a lot about her family and how that restricted the critical thinking. Then there's the education system. What about your education system? Did it encourage this kind of thinking or discourage, where you learnt to just reproduce what teachers gave you and that's it? Some education models are like that. Others are more, we're not going to give you the stuff. It's like, here are the tools, you show me what you can do, with support from the teacher. Different model, different philosophy. Whether maybe there were particular people, teachers sometimes come along who, maybe the system was like that, but a teacher or two were different. What's your experience there? Did they open things up for you? That was my experience. What about next level up? On a state or political level, some people are probably from societies where it's pretty hard to just explore whatever and certainly then express whatever. And if that's the case, sometimes that's the reason why lower down, that's why families are like that, Sometimes the societies are open and the families, therefore, have had the kind of education to be open and do encourage all that kind of stuff. Sort of what I'm trying to describe, one extreme or the other. Most people are somewhere in the middle with a mix. But in your, what we're going to, over the months, work through, certain tools we can use, certain ideas. But let's start with, as she does, by looking at background, where we're coming from. Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to put in number 4? It's all connected, isn't it? Have you changed in any ways? I think we might, from this background. We'll leave it kind of open and fluid, because you probably, people come from backgrounds like that sometimes. If you do, are you the same as that background, or has there been some sort of development? How do you think differently, if you do, from your parents? Or from, if it's parents who brought you up, maybe whoever brought you up, from your network of your upbringing, if you think about your ideas and your view of the world now, your philosophy, your values, is that different substantially from your origin? If so, what were those factors that caused that change? Most people have moved to some degree, but cultures, let's face it, cultures down through history reproduce themselves, sometimes reproduce themselves without change for hundreds or thousands of years, don't they? So therefore, in that case, people are not changing a lot. Cultures now are moving faster. There's all these historical questions we've got to look at. But some cultures don't change very much at all. They change very slowly, because there's not this kind of thinking, and that's neither good nor bad. It's just that's the historical fact. I'll just throw in one thing that's kind of obvious, but you as migrants who come from one culture to another have opened yourself up, haven't you? And there's been probably, on average, I would imagine, when you get chatting, more change than, it might be something you can talk about. Has there been more change, do you think, in you? If you went back and visited your friends who are the same age back in your native country, how would you compare on average? Have you changed more than them, or have they gone off maybe somewhere else or changed in a different direction? So I'm just trying to open the whole thing up for that discussion about your background and what were the forces conducive to criticality, what were the ones that were inhibiting. So inhibit, to restrict. What was inhibiting you? What was opening you up? And what's the final product? Where are you in that spectrum, do you think? Okay, over to you. Now we've got, the Zoomers, we've got 6 people, so we can have a couple of groups of 3, I think. I will stop sharing and make some rooms, breakout rooms for you fellas. Yeah. So jump into the rooms and have about 20 minutes or so at least, of chatting. I'll come through the rooms and around the groups. And what do we got? Naturally got a 3 and a 3 and a 2 up the back there. Yeah. Over to you. And the person, to get them started, the person with the longest hair starts. All right. Now, it's not a matter of taking in turns. It's just going to turn into a natural conversation, isn't it? Right? But off you go. All right. Okay, I'll put the... you'll need your document there. Yeah, they're on Facebook. It's probably good to get Facebook up to see the document. Yeah. I'm wondering if I can. I think I can share the screen.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so there you go.
So which one we're talking about?
Well, it's an amalgam, a connect. Really, start with number 1, but I think it will move through 2, 3, and 4. It's all kind of. I find it hard to separate it. You can't really. Yeah, and I think it's artificial to separate it. It's better if we have a longer discussion with it all connected. Yeah. Off you go. I'll come round and have a listen.
First, about history, I have definitely along with the hair.
You are a hero.
Outline your early experience. So I have like interesting experience like 4 years ago when I just attended Charlotte and then we with 7 international students in the British Foundation and most of them from Europe. And then just during our after class and just have a free chat and said, oh, I know one famous Chinese, oh, I'm from China by the way. I know one famous Chinese and Asian, which is called Tiananmen Square Institute.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you heard about that before?
Yes, I have been there.
Oh, really?
I was there the day before, so.
Really? Oh,
It was very close.
Yes,
yes.
What year it is?
I think it was 89.
Right, when they said that, it was do you know that they're not from China as well? Oh, you heard that? All of you heard that? And then when he talked back to me, what I'm talking about, I couldn't understand. I think that's because my English is not much. So I just
Because
asked
you were born much later.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not, but even, I think we probably were born in the same year, but even he heard about that, then I just asked him to search that for me, and I just look for that online in Chinese.
Julie, where are you?
And then just because it's interesting.
Hi, Al Mahmoud. How are you? Hi, Al Mahmoud. Can you hear me? Hello.
Sorry, I can't hear. Just a second.
Can you hear me?
Pretty much it. And I just even though we YouTube and then just
Yeah, right now I can hear.
Can you hear me? Yes, you can? Cool. Welcome to the group. We've just been going for 3/4 of an hour and we're just, I've just created breakout rooms where we're discussing the questions. Now, Mahmoud, are you in the Facebook group?
No, I'm not in the
Okay,
Facebook.
because I've made a Microsoft Word document with the questions on it, and they are in the Facebook group. Now, I'm just wondering, I will go to the Facebook group and get you the link.
we have like similar social media, like we have WeChat instead of messages from Facebook. We have like.
Okay, and I'll put it into chat.
Is it all the information I got from
Okay, yeah, I got locked out, so just got in.
No worries.
All right.
I thought what I know.
Jelly, I'll put you in a group. Hang on. I just need to assign you guys. Jelly, I'll put you in a group and go and have a chat in there. All right?
All right.
And I'll just
Well, I think this is
Actually,
very important.
sorry, Julie, I'll put you in the other group. Sorry.
Not just for you, I think for just about anybody from anywhere.
Now, Al Mahmoud, let me
And
help you.
what we were taught,
Chat.
and just by growing up,
Why is that?
it's
Sorry.
so basic. What's actually happened, like
In
around us,
chat, why can't I send it to everybody?
government pretty well picks and chooses what they want to learn about, and you tend to focus on that naturally.
Mm.
Not at my age. When I was in school, there was no internet, there was no
Ah,
computer,
there we go.
nothing but books.
Al Mahmoud, did you receive that?
Yes, I received.
Okay, so if you go there, you will see a Microsoft Word document,
Changing on the last one.
and we are talking about critical thinking and growing up and how much critical thinking was encouraged or discouraged. And we're looking at the first 4 questions in that group, in that document.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, good. So I will put you in a group, a breakout room, right? And you just have a chat with the other people there, and then for about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back to the main group. All right. Here we go.
Sure.
Here we go. So just jump in there. I'll come round and visit you in a minute, and.
In like in Switzerland too, for example, the big wars over there, we were only told certain things. I knew nothing about Australia. I knew nothing really about China. I knew where you are, but that's about it. So I think in every country, we are all very deprived of information and what we can get today from the internet.
Yes, yes. And this we will be in realize
Sorry, I'm in class. Sorry.
another I just learned. I have to practice.
Shirley, I don't know. We're having problems, aren't we?
Yeah, I couldn't get in the break room, but that's okay.
Let me try again.
Uh-huh.
Makes you feel disappointed.
All right. See how you go now. Can you see the little sign?
Yeah, I'm gonna click the join this
Yep.
button and see
Yeah.
if I can get in.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in the 60s,
Have a go.
I'm pretty old. In the 60s, when the Vietnam War was on,
Bingo.
I remember
She's in.
vividly that I asked my dad what's happening over there in the Vietnam War. He really couldn't tell me anything. There was not much in the media other than that information given by, say, America or France, the guys who were involved, but nothing else. For example, one, no idea.
I share this experience as well. I feel my point was I should have my own judgment, but you should give me all the freedom to get access to the information that I want, and then I have my own judgment. Not only that what you told me, and I just listen to you, and I believe that is the only information that is correct. Real issues is probably not, and probably is, but I don't know. But I should have the freedom to do my judgment.
I can do it. This is one of the reasons that I'm actually here. Yeah, it's like, well, I suppose I made a few notes here. I really liked, if you want, my personal experience of growing up in an environment that, in hindsight, was and still is to a large degree where critical thinking was not part of my childhood. Neither at home, in our community, like in our village, or the school education. And it wasn't really taught until university. And before that, you just had to believe whatever people told you. And as a child, it's really difficult. How can you explore?
Sorry to interrupt. You said you were born
No, that's
in
fine.
not very,
Would you
very
tell
big
me, oh, I'm not
city,
sure,
but
no.
a small town, county or something. Yeah. And then so how
Like in
did you
Switzerland,
go
it's
to?
a very old sort of country.
Sounds like
China.
you studied at high level
It's
or
very
at a high level.
limited to the
And
country
what's
itself.
your journey
So
of your small town to
conservative.
some yeah, high education?
That's the question. Yeah, you came from a small
Yes.
house, how come you ended up
Not
with
so
a
high
high
level.
level?
No, it looks pretty fancy. I saw it's a conservative from the island. It's not already.
It's not.
No.
Yeah, why?
Born into a democratic, conservative religion. Religion
Wow.
was,
Really?
like
God.
1,000 years ago. People who lived in the village were
Did you say 80 odd?
made to
80 odd?
and work
And they
for
odd,
kings.
odd, 80 odd.
involved.
It's a really good term. I didn't hear this, but
Yeah,
it sounds like 80. It sounded
What's
great.
80
This
odd?
80 means rough, doesn't mean just. It's a good little native
Everybody has to.
Are there 20 odd people?
But it's also.
Around.
Yeah.
the
15
people.
We tend to say about bigger
Community of
So
Swiss people.
I guess maybe
You can vote.
one of your
You can
parents or one parent
for
must be very
homes, you can vote for which is going to be fair. You
Yeah.
also vote for the people that you want to be represented by, like for president.
But anyway, you
Organized.
Say that again.
you
It's
can
a very
vote.
organized country.
No, what percent?
The average Swiss family,
Oh,
including
I don't know what percent.
we are
Kids.
pretty well organized and follow
What percentage or what percentage?
follow the
You can say what
assumed
percent
and
what
collusion,
percentage. You can say both.
which is like a sort of secret collusion
No,
between
not
the
true.
country and the families.
So I guess I
You have to
assume
follow the
you were.
rules and
That's-
the regulations
I
given by
assume you
some.
were very
I
outstanding.
would,
That's
have you
why.
heard of
You
castes?
can, you left your small
In
village,
different
small town, and then
different
went to
societies.
yeah.
And I would even argue that even in Switzerland, there's some kind of a caste level where people, say, in a village, there's almost like a boss somewhere. There's different families at different levels. And somehow just had to fit in, and families were expected to stay in that level.
I think
They weren't
the
really
back much
expected
earlier
to,
than China.
you know,
The president
a big say in important things.
I
Stay at that level. So for level, it's at.
Did I say in?
Yeah.
other
At
people
At that
around
level.
your classmates,
And
high
it came all the way
percentage
down to
of
growing
your
up.
classmates and then
You felt
my
like
primary school,
you
they went
were
to university, right? So that
you're
means
making a step forward or
generous
upward.
people
And I found it
education
really
system
frustrating.
is
Really frustrating.
more
As I
money.
grew up, I felt like
Yeah, and then
I had really opportunities to express myself or learn about the information I was
It's really resulting always from the
sort of in the middle. that's what's relevant. Yeah, or sort of.
And
Yeah.
you could see them from
In some ways, yes, no, I couldn't, I sort of was quite happy where I was from that point of view. But, I can, what was something you wanted to go forward, or backward, or something? I'm always restricted, because as soon as I made a bit of noise,
Flinders.
right, the only way for me was either just to break out of that system was like either concentrating on higher education to get a better position.
You mean, so the daughter of a colleague came with the work group?
Overseas to study or just to go away from where I grew up. I'm sort of free. And that's what happened when I came to Australia. Almost a day around, I feel like,
By themselves.
yes or no, you can't, or you
Yeah, survival. Right, okay. So you wouldn't do that at all?
Parents.
Yeah.
I would say
How old is the
conservative person when it comes to like this kind of discussion.
Right.
English, I have to express myself or ideas.
Right. At what age would you be able to do that?
I wasn't
No, because I guess it's by a camp of some sort, because the key thing there is there's a teacher, isn't it?
all the
Responsible
stage
is legally responsible.
because I was a student in school, you have some rules to follow. So
No,
uh,
not at all, not at all.
another
What
type
about
of
if they're in
person
year
who
12?
do this, like, quite often.
So 17, 18.
I think even though in our country,
Right.
we
It might be okay
right
then.
to say what is right, what is wrong. But in school,
Yeah.
one to think this way. So I think
Yeah, right.
and also I wasn't a very good student back then.
Right.
I think that's over the main part. So
Right. Good word. Yeah, good
because
word.
I
Overprotective.
don't know what to.
So how does
use
that
to
affect the
critically
thinking
or
process?
when I should do it. So because I wasn't interested in
I see.
the thing they taught in school. So it's very challenging for me to do this critical thinking. My parents teach me what is right.
Yes.
Ever since I would say ever since I moved to Australia, I finally had a chance to learn what is quite critical thinking. That's why I'm doing university. And that's the first time I actually did this. I look back what I have done, what I did before, and what could I have done to.
You're always under supervision, we'd say. Yes, under supervision.
I think
Overseeing. Yeah.
It's a good example though for how
Overseen by
when you are in that environment, see how it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, if you're not allowed to explore that intelligence, it can be so
In the past,
surprised.
they didn't have.
And then you come back something completely different, all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, and you interested as well, and starts to unfold. It's when I came to Australia, as I said, I felt free,
Yeah.
it was great, but I couldn't speak English.
Children.
Oh,
Right. Oh, they
I
have.
still feel.
So you had more then than the kids now.
Yeah, but what have been here for longer than but it's funny, like here,
So the family size has come down,
to,
and now there's more supervision. Oh, that's interesting.
in here every evening, went to English classes, like immersions classes, and the teacher
Yeah.
called me names. He told me my name is Heinz. He called me Mr. Beans.
Right, yeah.
And he called me
Right.
a number
Like
Rose
Rose.
57. And I didn't know what it means until later.
Because you're in the
It was
countryside,
actually,
right?
you know,
It's true here. Kids in the country, physically, they play a lot more, they climb trees, they go down the creek, they ride a bike. Yeah, and some, hi Zara.
Sorry.
No worries. Just don't forget everybody, check in, please. Yeah. So, yeah, and I've heard teachers say, oh, country kids are more mature, like primary school kids.
Take very long.
Yeah,
I
take
felt
average
like
year
unbanked
two,
I was in
so
Switzerland.
in the country, they're more mature, so they've just done lots more stuff.
Telling you things.
Yeah.
Just listen and think that what they tell me is right.
That's true, yeah, maturing, that's right, they don't actually know.
So I'm really intensely.
You're right. Yeah, just on that level of like confidence, physical independence, this teacher thought they were more mature. I was surprised when I said it, because I thought, really, country kids are more mature. But on that level, but I see your point about like sophisticated ideas, no,
Things started to happen.
that's generally like
From kids.
yes.
We're talking about, I think I'm looking all the physical culture always studied well. I'm so curious about it. And then I think
So you moved to the city?
maybe good at
Yeah. It's like a lot of us, isn't it? Urbanization. Yeah.
not really
Interesting.
following
Just
the rules.
talk about the first form.
How did you end up coming here?
Well, that
Is
is
it-
Be like this,
graduate from my.
then like I was before.
Yeah.
And Dili, we did not hear you. This our third member of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came in late, so I missed the part. I might just talk about a little bit. We were talking about our early experience, how that shaped us to develop our critical thinking.
These
And
questions.
Oh yeah, questions. Yes. Let me go to the questions.
But yeah, that is the first question, your early experience, Julie.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
My early experience. Oh, we have got back to. Okay, maybe save that part. Yeah, we have all gone back to. Have we? Is it in the big room? Still the break?
no, we're still in the breakout room.
Okay.
You can relax. You're not talking to 20 people.
My early experience, I'd say like a Jing, because in Chinese culture, like I was born 1988, so that's around that century. Still very traditional. My parents, they're traditional, not very well educated. And then within the education system, I think we are all very obedient, respectful, sometimes blindly obedient to government. Parents always right, government always right, emperor's always right. Even old days, husband's always right, wife is not right. So yeah, didn't question much. And in classroom, in school, if you, well, actually the students, they're not questioning the teacher. If they get a different method of working out this mathematics, and then they tell the teacher is considered as a sign of disrespect. Why you come out with different things, you know? It needs to be in my way, it's in this way, so you work out in this formula, okay? So I say the environment is not very conducive. And even well, we were all taught, you know, political ideologies, histories, even the history book, textbook was written in a way the government wanted you to learn the history that will be part of it has been wiped out. Not very conducive. Which part maybe helped me develop my critical thinking? It could be due to my parents, because of they were doing business all in different provinces and different states, so I had to move, constantly moving, change school, this classroom, move to from this province to that province. So I guess just until recently I realized maybe that experience helped me to look at people from different perspectives, because I moved from regional area to big city, to different provinces, different cities. People speak different dialects, they're minorities and they do different things, and I had to make new friends. So I guess that maybe helped me. And then when I grew up, become a teenager, I sort of a bit rebellious, not follow my parents, and then made my decision to go back to my hometown, lived on my own since I was 12. So because when I was 12, I had to deal with everything on my own. So you sort of develop your independence. You had to, you know, my parents, they gave me money. I had to work out which things I need to buy, which things I need to use. And then what are so it's, I guess independence also is a big part of helping you to think independently, come up with your solutions and not just following. No one gave me instruction, no one gave me guidance, I just go. So I guess I grew up widely. That helped a bit. And then yeah,
It's a good description, Julie. Interesting, and moving around the provinces. Yeah, so developing independence, and of course, the biggest independent move of all is coming to Australia, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
you can't get more independent than that. Yeah, and just bravo for your English. Wow, so good. I thought last week how good it was, and just hearing you speak in an extended section. I'm not sure. You either made no mistakes or just one little tiny one, mathematics.
Mathematics. Oh,
That's the only mistake in all that talking. It's just
really?
grammatically beautiful.
Oh,
Brilliant.
thank you, John.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. So okay, that's an interesting thing. Yeah. So growing up and managing yourself independently, I guess that's one. There's a certain amount of criticality there. I guess it's a little bit different from critical thinking and criticizing society, isn't it? I mean, the way Mary Heath has interpreted this critical thinking in this document is that social criticality, what I'm going to call social criticality. But yeah, look, the first step is just being independent. Physically, emotionally, etc. So yeah, and no doubt you've developed some of that with your, because you've done your masters in nursing, haven't you?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of social theory in there, isn't there? A lot of critical social theory, huge amounts. I've tutored some people through some edited some people's stuff in nursing. There's a lot of social criticality. It's great. Yeah, really good. Lots of models of the psychosocial models of disease and all the factors, etc. And you have to critique all that. Yeah, you would have developed that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
come a long way.
Maybe my desire of independence made me moved to Singapore. And from there, all of this overseas living experience started to open my journey, started the journey of critical thinking, started to look at the world differently and comparing the society, nursing systems, and the way people are working and things, not just from between provinces to provinces, but between countries and to countries. And then, yeah, my critical thinking, yeah, mainly after I went overseas.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, you've not only got two societies by the sound of it, but a third. You've got Singapore, so you've got three that you can sort of compare. And no doubt, I mean, I find it in a different way. No doubt that experience of the three places when you were doing your theoretical work in your masters, you mentally, just emotionally, you could refer to a lot of that. It helped your theoretical thinking. Yeah, and I have found that with my political thinking, and like I'm doing a PhD in and part of it is political theory, but you know, I've had lots of different political activist experience, and that stuff on the ground has informed my theory enormously. So yeah, so getting that different experience of three cultures really develops the kind of flexibility and fluidity, doesn't it, of your thinking. And it can help you not just with the practicalities, but with the higher theoretical level, I guess is what I'm getting at. So yeah, it's a great thing to do. All right, I'm going to jump to another room.
Yeah.
Excellent, very interesting. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Oh. Are we back to the main group now? Or no, John just joined us. Oh, you're mute, John. You're muted. What does he? I was just trying to to find the passage. She was talking about prejudices.
Can you hear me now, Hilly? Yeah, for some reason
Yes.
I've got a view problem. I can only see Hilly right now.
Oh, okay.
And everybody else is hang on, view options. Yeah, I don't know why, what's going on. Sorry. Sorry, to visit you right at the end here, like that. Ah, there we go. Yeah, it was because I think someone was sharing a document. Yeah. Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See everybody now. Yeah. So, sorry, you're the last group I've come around to. So sorry, I haven't caught up with you since. Anything of interest you've discovered from each other? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, common experiences there, or very different?
Yeah, I think common experience.
Common.
Yeah.
And what's common across people's experience, Carolina?
Well, especially about the family, that there were not many things that we can share with them. And also the education system, that we agree that normally teachers just go through the curriculum, but there wasn't much like debate. Like as I say, for example, here in Australia, when you do some kind of course, I can appreciate that you have debate, and something that is not really common in my original country. Yeah. And I think it was the same for the rest. And also things that they had to hide, like, as I say, he says someone is, for example, divorced or something, or gay or something like that, you can also you can talk about that kind of things in the class or even with your people, and I think all of that. And also, even these days now, many people, even they are still young, but I think they have these values sticking from the educational system that we had. Yeah. And people who maybe didn't have the opportunity to see another backgrounds, to meet with other backgrounds and different minds, still stick to that values, which we don't think is critical thinking.
So even though they're in a more multicultural environment, they still tend to stick with their own.
Yeah, because what I mean is that some people which didn't have the opportunity maybe to meet other backgrounds, and they are just living in the environment, like, you know, the typical family or friends forever, you know, and never. Yeah. Some people who never change maybe their way to behave or their way to meet or to hang out with other people. I think despite the fact that they still are young, I can see that they are stick to all values.
Yeah, right.
Coming from an educational system.
So when they're more isolated lifestyle, monocultural.
Yeah.
Not multicultural. Yeah, true. So which country are you from, Carolina?
I'm from Spain.
Spain. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Spanish education is fairly.
Well, it used to be in my times. Now I see things have changed, but however, if I think about my friends of my age, I know all of them, but many of them, specifically the people who didn't move or didn't, as I say, travel around, they were just having the same life as usual, you know, living in their city with their friends, like the current ones. Still, it's like the thing. When I, for example, I go there and talk with them, I see we have different points of views, because I see things. I am used, you know, to hang out with many people with different backgrounds. Yeah. And for them, that is something weird, for example, or you have to have the Spanish approach to things. But and I'm not meaning that that is the Spanish approach in these days. It used to be the Spanish approach days ago, you know, you mean not now, but exactly. But I mean that people that maybe didn't have the opportunity to experience this kind of things. For me, I can see that they don't have very critical thinking, because they are also isolate or old mind. As I say, for example, when you think that you can say you're gay, or you have friends who are lesbian, or someone is divorced, this kind of ideology comes from religion. Yeah.
True. And countryside is often a lot more religious than cities as a general trend, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So and that's true of Australia as well. Even though overall we're a less religious society, still it's more conservative in the countryside. And you know I can identify with what you're saying about certain isolated groups.
Yes, Harley.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, right. So, I imagine what you're describing there is common across the group, and you know the other people here as well. It's basically that rural-urban division creates a lot of that. Yeah,
that's true.
Cool. Yeah, just a couple of points. When you say it's a Spanish thing, that people, so la gente is singular, right? But in English, plural. So we say those people. Okay. It's those people.
Okay.
And
those, yes.
Yeah. And this one's common across not just the Spanish one, those kinds of things, when we say that kind of things, I'll go through this with the group, but those kinds of things, each one is plural. They like or they don't like those kinds of things, 3 plurals. Yeah, so plurals are a little bit different from English to Spanish, but Yeah, good clear speaking other than that. Great. Well done.
Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for that observation, because I think it's one we'll bring into the discussion about that rural that's come up with a few other groups as well. Cool, thanks. We'll go back to the main group.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Hey John, actually I'm trying to join from my laptop because I face some problems with the phone. So can I join again?
You are silent. No. No, yes. Okay.
I always forget. Thank you. Please remind me if I forget to unmute. All right. Right. We are gathered here today to marry. Speech in the hotel. All right. Good. They're very interesting discussions going on there. And I'll bring up some, we'll split this into two things. One, I'll just go, just some interesting language points that I heard people saying, or, you know, either mistakes or they're trying to say something and they use one word and I can think of a better way of saying it. So we'll just a bit of English to begin, and then we'll move on to the ideas. Okay, so just got a few. If Zoomers can see the board, all right. I'll try to write big enough. Just shout out, Zoomers, if it's unclear, or if I'm standing in the way of the camera or whatever. Okay. Let me see. I might move it that way a little bit. Better, yeah. Okay. By the way, can everyone in the room, in the break, which we might do the English and then have the break and then we'll discuss the ideas, all right? So in 10 minutes or so, we'll have a break. If you haven't checked in, can you make sure you do, please? Cool. Now, there are 80 odd universities in my city. It's a good way of saying, you might not have heard that, but someone used it well, but they actually put an S on the end there, and we don't, no S. But that's a quick way of saying approximately 80. There were 100 odd people outside Parliament House. That doesn't mean there are 100 odd strange people. I guess you could say that. But notice it's got if you're going to write it, it's got a dash. Because if you said 80 odd people and we left that off, it would mean 80 strange people. So there, your hyphen in writing, it does matter. Okay.
So we use their A's, not their R's.
What did I say? There were 80 odd people. You would need to use the plural there. So 80 odd people were all talking in the room, or there were, yeah? You should use plural. Interestingly though, the language is changing, and younger people, you will, just a basic sentence, right? Week 1 in English, or week 5 or something. There's a few people there. Now, what's wrong with that?
There are.
Yeah.
Several.
Could be there are, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
But you have a listen to anyone sort of under 30, and most of them say there is a few. There's, oh yeah, let's all have a cup of coffee. Oh yeah, there's 20 cups. That's enough for everybody, right? Oh, we need a couple more chairs. Oh, there's 5 up the back. Everyone's doing it. So that most basic subject-verb agreement, plural and singular, right, it's really like core of the language. That's actually getting broken and changing. Now, what's interesting is, I was looking it up actually, and some linguists have looked at it. Now, it's actually existed for quite a long time in history of English. It goes right back several hundred years. People broke this rule, right? But it's a frequency thing. It's getting more frequent. And this person measured, I thought it might be an American thing, because usually our language change is, around the world for English, is driven by, you know, America as the dominant empire, you know, usually happens. But this person compared United Kingdom, Australia, and America with this. And we are the worst offenders. It is Australians who are doing this the most, right? Then followed by America, then British. They are breaking that subject-verb agreement rule. So that's interesting. Like, it's not coming from America. We're doing it the most, and we've been doing it the most for some time. Now, what's more common? See, that's a contraction. When you bring the two together, you say it quickly. That is far more common than that. People do not break, people still break the rule, but it's much less common. This is what people do. So probably because it's sort of, it's only a half word, isn't it? And it feels not so bad. People notice it a bit more when you do that. Now, what's interesting though is it's only in speech. Try doing that in writing. There is 6 cups on the table. That looks really weird, and everybody will say, terrible grammar. But a minute later, they'll go out and have a cup of coffee with their friend and they say, there's 6 friends I want to introduce you to, right? They're not aware of it. So they're breaking it in speech, but it's important for you to understand, do not break this rule in writing, because natives are not doing it. But natives, and especially younger ones, it's getting more common. And Aussies, all right? So you've got to do it with an Aussie accent, mate. There's 6 of me mates waiting to talk to you, right? So anyway, that's the interesting thing about that, which came from that.
So I'm unconsciously speaking the correct way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're very Aussie. You're like a native, Candy. It's good news, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, here's a simple one. At a high level, or somebody said at that level, but it's at, not in. I think both people said in. It's not in a high level or on, it's at. Just that prepositional thing.
What about nowadays under 30 people say?
Hey? Nowadays?
What about nowadays under 30 people say still at a high level, not in a high level?
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
Oh.
Pity.
Okay.
Now, this is a really common one. I hear this all the time amongst non-natives. By the way, percent is 2 separate words.
No.
Don't join it up. It's 2, see the space? Because Latin, per cent, right? However, don't mix it up with this. When we write percentage, it's 1 word,
Oh.
right? That's why some of you might make that mistake. Natives will make that mistake too, and it's almost become acceptable, but not quite. So put it separate. How much percent of people, blah, 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 whatever, eat chocolate cake for breakfast, right? Anything. How much percent? No, wrong. What do we say?
What
percent? Yeah, that's right. What? Good. So people, when I'm asking, know it, but some people are saying it in speech, and it's just very common for non-natives to say that. You can say how many people eat chocolate cake. Huh? That's fine, but not how much people, by the way. Not how much percent. So what percent? You can say what percentage too. So you can say both of those as a question. When you give the figure, 28%, isn't it, not percentage? The answer is a particular figure. It's going to be that one. All right.
Percentage of or percentage to?
No, percentage of, always of. No, no to. Yeah. Throw in any questions as they come up, please, if you've got something you want to ask. Just pronunciation thing. Not assume. Yeah. So
my supervisor said, don't always, because we have to do a lot of assumptions during my job.
Mm-hmm. You make assumptions, you don't do them. Yep.
Yeah.
So collocation, you make an assumption. Good one.
And as I said, sometimes I say, I assume blah, 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 blah. And he said, don't assume, because assume is the as you me.
Is what?
As you me. So you separate assume the ASS, you, me.
Oh, as.
It's just a joke.
Okay. I haven't heard that one.
Because assumption is your stop doing too much assumptions.
Stop
Making.
Good. Stop making. So we make. I'm going to write that one up because we need it. We're going to talk a lot about assumptions. We started talking about them last week in critical thinking, didn't we? So you make an assumption, you don't do it. There's your collocation. Collocation. For new people is, I talk about it all the time, about 3 times an hour, a package of words, a frequent package in a language. So we make assumptions, and it's also what's frequent and what we don't do as well. We don't say we do assumptions. As you know, make and do are tricky in English, aren't they? And the different collocations, and you just have to learn them. And that's the point. Often there's no real logic to it. It's just as logical to do an assumption, I guess, as make it. But it's just what native speakers do, right? That is, and what they do frequently in the package. That's the collocation. So you make assumptions.
I got one word I couldn't pronounce.
Hey? Yeah.
She uses the word I hope for contexts.
Context?
Like when I looked it up, it sort of shows in
that word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
EXST, but then you add on an S.
Yes.
And it's that context.
That's right. Yes, true. Yeah, hard one to say. So it's a pronunciation thing. So if we break that, yes, you're right. Because that, if we write it, it's 4 consonants, isn't it, in a row. So what we need to do is build it up, don't we? So let's break it down, and we'll just start with this one. So that's hard for some. Right, now let's put a T on it. They're all sounding good. Right, this is the brain breaker, isn't it? Yeah. So let's do just this bit. Text. Sorry, Cecilia, I'm breaking your sight line a bit. Text. Just do it really. The key to pronunciation is slowing right down, isn't it? Breaking it down and not speeding up too quickly. Just keep it really slow. Text. It's sounding pretty good, the ones I can hear. All right, now we'll just put on con, just writing the pronunciation. Context. Context. That's good, Jackie, yeah. Context. Don't miss your S. With a context. I'm not quite hearing that at the end. Try to get that one. Context. That's the other thing to practice. In English, we get a lot of words that end in t. Just that by itself. Hits. Yeah. Cuts. Yeah. So getting that right. Yeah. We've got 2 packages there and we put them together. These things are called clusters when we put consonants together. In English, we've got a lot of them. That's just about the hardest. Yeah. 4 consonant cluster. I can't think of any bigger one. Yeah. All right. A new word that I think is probably new for you. But somebody was describing, quite a few people actually, were describing family contexts, which were like, you can't breathe, you know, you're so not free, you're so unfree, it feels like you're choking, you're suffocating, suffocate, like when you die from lack of oxygen. Suffocate, right? And you say, oh, the metaphorically, we say, oh, you know, my family environment is suffocating. I want to get out. Well, that word just means the same thing, stifling. Like if we shut the door, turned off the air conditioning, and it was a hot day, after a while, you know, it's stifling, isn't it? It's just when you have difficulty breathing. This is stronger, but this is like when that air is heavy, you know, and it's metaphorical. We use these for, we could say, stifling situation or environment, and by that we mean like social emotional environment. It's quite a good word for describing that kind of situation when you could be workplace, could be relationship, could be family, you know, suffocating, stifling.
It's just in a controlling situation.
Could be for all sorts of reasons. Someone's controlling you, or just so kind of boring and no stimulation. Then it's like, oh, no fresh air, nothing fresh. Yeah.
Need to get tested.
Metaphorical. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's any relation with Steve?
Stiff is, we don't really about relationships or environments. What we use stiff for if someone's emotionally kind of tight and they're not relaxed and they're not, you know, just open. Oh, he's a bit stiff, like, you know, so formal and removed and doesn't communicate easily. We'd use that maybe about a person. These are more about relationships, environments. We can certainly use it. We could put, so the collocations, stifling situation, stifling environment, stifling relationship, or suffocating, you know, for any of those. Stiff's a little bit different.
What's a stiff? Sorry?
Stiff is like, if something is stiff, you can't bend it.
Rigid.
Rigid, exactly, yes. Okay, moving on. Just a local thing. Bit of geography. We know, I think you might know, up north, beautiful place to go. Beautiful mountains, about 4 or 5 hours drive. Flinders. We put a the because it's a mountain range. The Flinders Ranges. Don't forget your S's. Flinders, Matthew Flinders, 1802, went right around Australia. Yeah, that's right, he went that way. And ranges. While I'm on it, I've mentioned this, but I'm just going to remind people, keep driving for another 15 hours. You get to Alice Springs. Don't forget the S. It's Springs. And I've reminded people about that and teaching for about 20 years. And then I went to my second visit in Alice Springs, and I went to the exact place where the water comes up, because spring means like water coming up. And guess what? There's only one spring. Yeah. So it should be called Alice Spring. But so you're all right. All right. You've been correct, and we've all been wrong for years. But okay, don't know why. Yeah, maybe there were more springs and now there's only one. Okay. People were talking about parents and authorities, teachers, you know, stifling their critical thinking, just connecting some of these words. So, because you are under supervision. Why under? There's a logic to the preposition. Let's look at it. Super means over, on top. Vision, looking, isn't it? So if the parent or the teacher is up top and looking, you're below, aren't you? You are under their vision from above. So the point I'm getting at is if we unpack words, there is often a logic. Instead of, oh, is it under, at, or of, or oh, bloody English prepositions, you know? They're all random. They're not. They're not random. If you unpack words, often it's not 100% money back guarantee, but 70 to 80% of the time, maybe even more, there's a metaphorical logic. Because the question is, why did that appear in the language? Why did it arrive? Because people thought it was logical and then they spread it as an expression. There must have been a logic at the beginning.
Supervision is like putting pressure, and you cannot be on top of the pressure. You're definitely
Yes,
under the pressure.
true, Zara, but if we unpack the word, it's about it's about vision, it's looking, isn't it? So we have to think about the word in those terms. But if you do, you'll get the logic. Okay, about a few more points.
You can say under police supervision or under KGB supervision.
That's right. You can add an adjective. Yes, under police supervision, under formal supervision, under parental. So parents become parental as an adjective, kind of useful adjective. Parental supervision, parental guidance, parental care.
There's another word you can use.
Yeah.
Henpeck.
Henpeck. Henpeck is about a husband being harassed constantly by the wife. Okay.
Under supervision.
Under wife supervision. Okay. But we don't have one the other way, do we?
What's the word?
So, henpeck. So, like a hen is pecking. So a hen female pecking the male. Now, it's a rather sexist term, we'd have to say, because anything that does have an equivalent gender opposite expression, you've got to say, well, all right, it's a sexist thing, right?
Are you suffering?
So, poor old Heinz.
Your wife is not here.
I think it's an interesting one. If you think, I don't know, do you have a similar expression in your native language?
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
think, what about the opposite? Do you have one for a man constantly doing a similar thing to the wife?
No.
I'm hearing a no or a silence.
That is just a criminal
Huh?
behavior, crime behavior.
Criminal, yeah, true. If it gets domestic violence or abusive, yeah,
No, actually,
right.
we have when I'm thinking.
But we're just thinking of lots of little.
We definitely have, but when I'm thinking about it, it's used much less often
Right.
compared with the other one.
Yeah.
It's very
Yes.
rare that you use the other one,
Uh-huh.
which actually says the man is constantly abusing the wife.
Yeah.
But the other one is actually used very
Frequently.
frequently. Yes.
Right. I mean, what we're engaging in really is a bit of critical thinking, actually. Thinking about language and what we call, and it's pretty important and it's increasingly talked about and noticed, the gendered, we've made an adjective, the gendered use of language. You know, so when there's not that balance and it's not kind of equal, so we get HP, henpeck, right? But we've got 0 on the other side or nothing, or in Persian case, it's very much less frequent, isn't
There
it?
was something actually it was very confronting for me when a guy had kind of, I don't know what you call it, I don't know the English appropriate name for it, something on. And so look at me, I have a wife beater on. I was like, what? So
really?
What wife beater? Like, look at this. They called it wife beater once. I was like, why? Because the guys who put this on are tough, and they call it.
Is that right?
They call it wife beater.
Right.
It was also
Is it like a singlet or something? Is it?
It's something actually you put under a formal jacket like this. That one.
Yeah.
They were wearing many years ago. These
Right.
days, some people
Yeah.
sometimes
I
wear
know
it.
the little waistcoat. That's
Yeah,
strange.
something like that.
Right.
And
But
he told me
again,
that they
nothing.
call it wife beater. I
Yeah.
was like, what? Even the word is offensive.
And it's violent, isn't it? So, you know, we could make a list of words here that there's no equivalent, or words here that there's no equivalent. So, you know, that could be an exercise one day. We look at the gendered use of English.
But
That actually would be an interesting exercise.
But that's actually put not just pressure on the female in the society.
Yeah.
It's put lots of pressure on the male in the society, because when they are actually under this kind of situation, being abused by a female person,
Yeah.
because everything goes against them. It's like everything bad supposed and controlling supposed to actually happen to a woman. And if it happens to a man, they usually stay quiet for a very long time and suffer. Right. Because they just feel so embarrassed to raise about it.
Right. Because culturally it's embarrassing.
It's just like they think other people, especially other men, think less of them.
True.
If they let it.
True.
Let them
This stuff. You're good point, Zara. It works against women, but it works against men too, doesn't it? It creates stereotypes, and stereotypes are, I've rubbed it off, stifling. We get stuck in, you know, they often restrict our freedom, and the critical thinking is about breaking out of that. So yeah, it's a good point. We should do a session on linguistic critical thinking, and that would be a good place to start. You know, there's so many different approaches to critical thinking, but that would be a good one, and we probably learn a lot of English and at the same time. We'll do that in the next few weeks. Thank you for the idea. All right, a few more points. A little bit like the supervision one. Yeah, Zara.
There was something actually was really bothering me. Maybe we can talk about it when you are talking about gender use of language.
Yeah.
And it's not just about that. Most of the problems which is created by male people in the society.
Yeah.
And when they talk about it the way that it's just about the women and the problem they always have. For example, especially in the parliament.
Yeah.
When they are talking about violence against women,
yeah.
They never say, let's address the issue and stop men from harassing the women or being abusive towards them. We spend this amount of money for women and help them to escape the situation. From whom?
So addressing the root cause of it.
The way you're talking, it looks like that they think, look, women, you have lots of problems. We spend this money on you. Go and try to fix the problem. They never say, we spend this money on violent men to control their behavior. Yeah. And that's really annoying. It looks like that they think, look, these female people in this society, they're just bothered. They're just like a burden in the shoulder, on the shoulder. Let's pay them this money to help them with the situation they're just constantly complaining about. But actually, they don't give those monies to women. They
money,
spend,
not those monies.
Yeah,
that money.
That money. So they spend that money on stopping male people from harassing women.
All right, let's expand it. We'll do it. To
Yeah,
bigger thing.
yeah,
It's part. It's part of a bigger thing, isn't it? Of gender, and I'll just introduce a key word, which is related to our critical thinking: deconstructing. I think I mentioned it last week. You construct, historically ideas, but deconstructing, like unpacking it and what's going on, and that way breaking out of the stereotypes. Yeah, that's a whole package that we should explore. Important. This one, overseen by someone. All right. So again, a bit like the under supervision. Just some quick ones. Mathematics. Don't forget your mathematics. That's got that by the way. Tricky consonant, isn't it? Mathematics. Economics, statistics. There's lots of subjects, aren't there, with X.
Overseen means overlooked, or is exactly
no,
opposite?
Not the opposite, just not quite related. Overseen is like supervise.
Oh, okay, got it.
Overlook, I didn't see that. I made a mistake. So that is, yeah, good point. That's different, not that one. Not equal to overlook, not the same. This expression, somebody was talking, and I just thought of this idiom, you might not know it. When someone is intolerant, we're talking about tolerance and flexibility. My way or the highway. Have you heard that expression?
No.
So if somebody's very like a parent or a partner or a husband or wife, in relationships generally, or a friend, they are very fixed in their thinking and they want something done this way and no other way, or a boss. You do it that way or get on the highway and go, right? So you get the idea? It's like somebody's very fixed, intolerant. We often put this, it's my way or the high. So with that guy, that boss, it's my way or the highway. That's why I left. Right? Usually it's put in that sort of context. But a few people were describing situations where parents or teachers or something, authority figures, were kind of like that. It's my way or the highway. Just listen to me. This is the way you do it, or otherwise go. Desire for something, not desire of, just a preposition. Desire, somebody was talking about desire for independence, not desire of, always desire for freedom, desire for understanding. Two more. I hear this quite a lot, and we need to do a bit of work on it.
Why is only desire for?
Why
is only what?
Desire for?
Can you use desire of?
No, can't.
Why?
That's what I'm saying. Just doesn't. I should scratch it out. It just, we don't say it in English.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, I wrote collocation before. It's just, that's the collocation. Desire for, and desire of is not the collocation.
Don't you say I have a desire of?
No. No. Desire for. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
either the English way or the highway.
That's right. Very good. Exactly. Look. There's an example, perhaps. So you're Spanish speaker.
Yeah. Spanish.
That's right. You say. That's the problem with Spanish. It uses de a lot for lots of things, and English we replace it. Yeah.
Sorry, John. When you were correcting me when I was talking,
Yeah.
you said that money, not that money is.
That's right. That money. Money is always, money is singular. It's noun uncountable.
Is it possible that it's changed? Because my boss always using money.
Okay, yes.
Maybe not.
No.
We write a lot, and we write a lot.
Yes.
And he changed my writing. He says, it's
Yeah.
money. It's why you write money.
Right. Now, that is true, because what I need to add is in some workplaces, and these are the ones, usually people who deal with money a lot. So different kinds of money. All right. So illegal money, tax, insurance money. So accountants, for example, dealing with lots of different streams of money, they talk about monies. Administrators talk about monies. Legal people sometimes, looking at organizations, talk about monies. Now, so what we see, here's a pattern in English. We see uncountable nouns that are singular in everyday talk. So in everyday conversation, say money and write money. If you become a specialist in a certain area where you need to discriminate between the different kinds of monies, then it will change.
And they don't write it like this. It doesn't even write
Do they write it like this?
Yes.
Yeah, right. I think that could be my mistake. There might be two ways of, because I never write it because I'm not an accountant and I don't read much of that stuff. But I think you're right. I think it's IE. So everybody, I think that is more common. Thanks, Sarah. IES. It's a weird, kind of irregular way. I would do it like that. Like monkeys is EY. Yeah, the pattern. It's just a funny. Yeah. So look, but what the point I want to make is it happens with some other words as well. So in general speech and writing, that damage is uncountable. We don't say damages. But people who deal with...
You don't say damages.
No. Yeah, we don't.
Sorry.
Yeah. Now, but think of people who deal with damage a lot, which
Lawyers, civil lawyers.
lawyers can, yeah.
You use
So
damages.
you use damages a lot, yeah, and insurance companies, house damage, car damage, etc., and different kinds of damages. So again, the specialists put an S on it. That's a bit of it happens with other uncountable nouns as well.
I'm pretty sure I heard damages.
Yeah,
before.
you would have, but I just want to point out that is about how many people are insurance dealers. It's about 2%, I'm guessing, right? 2% of usage, and that one is about, the same. So 98% of our writing and speaking, unless, you're an insurance person writing every day. So just be sensitive to that, okay? And one last one. And this is mainly for, we got a couple of Spanish speakers. That people, because people in Spanish is, in that sense, is singular. So we have to say those people, don't we? Because it's plural. Now, so that's that one. I need to get back to this. I got distracted with that. That kind of things do we need to do? This is plural, isn't it?
Those.
Those, thanks. Those kinds of things. We've got three plurals. 1, 2, 3. Those kinds of things. We've got to make it all agree. Yeah? Pretty common expression. Oh, those kinds of things annoy me. Or, yeah, those kinds of things.
I usually say those kind of things.
Yeah, someone will make a mistake somewhere, either say that or drop that. Usually that's okay, but these, somebody will miss one of those or all of them. So 3 plurals. All right, let's have a break. We've got an hour to go. So the last hour will be talking, that's some of the English stuff. We'll be getting on to the critical thinking points and some things I want to raise, some things that came out of discussion. We can discuss more as a group. But let's have a 10-minute break.
John?
Yeah, Hilly.
No, thank you for today, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, no worries, Hilly. And I'll send the video out if you want to watch the rest later.
Perfect. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thanks, Hilly. See ya.
See ya. Bye.
Ciao.
Do you know like Kinky Flat?
Yeah, I do. On the side of the Torrens River.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because last week I had a class meeting with Chinese essay.
Oh, yeah. That's right. They're on that part of the Torrens, yeah.
And then Linton is the tennis owner, and he just mentioned that the Kinky Flat.
Flat,
And
yeah.
he said that Kinky Flat that we usually mention area is not actually called Kinky Flat. Kinky Flat is actually the other area.
Okay.
And he just says like, figure it over and to figure out why it's called Kinky Flat.
What was that?
Why that area is called.
So she's
Kinky
gonna,
Flat.
I heard
Yeah,
George was
I've heard a couple of theories. One of them is, do you know the bilby in the little bilby
I saw that
animal?
as well.
Yeah. Now in Ghana, that I'd have to look it up, but it's something like Pingu,
Yeah.
and they lived in that area.
Ah.
So, the Pingu,
I never see that.
and it was flat. No, you don't now because it's a city, and the bilby,
Yeah.
because of farming and cities, is almost extinct.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are they the same thing? The pink or the BB? Are you talking the
Yeah.
same animal?
Yeah, the Pingu, or something like that in Ghana, was the name for the bilby. That was the Aboriginal name.
Okay.
So when the white fellas came and they said, "Oh, what's this area?" and the Ghana people said, "Oh, this is Pingu,"
Oh, yeah.
because lots of bilbies lived there. So it's actually an Aboriginal, and then English people heard it, and they, how it gets changed. It sounds like pink. Somebody thought it sounded like pinky, but it was really Pingu or something like that.
Why is it called flat then? Oh, you just call it
Just a flat area. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a hidden Aboriginal origin.
Yeah.
Get a bit of air in here. Hans, can you play around with that maybe, just rather than heat? Okay. It's a little bit stifling. We probably need a little bit of fresh air to get all the COVID out of the room. You tested today?
I just become a mentor on holiday today.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Hey, congratulations. Yeah. So what does that involve?
I'm just going to mentor the uni students.
Oh, okay. That sounds similar to what Sophia might be doing at the USA. Yeah, you're kind of mentoring. Would you call it mentoring or tutoring?
Oh, the mentoring is for my youth, the uni I started before.
Yeah.
It's in the Federation University.
Oh.
So uni is I'm going to work there as a micromechanical technologist. So
And what?
it's the place is called Australian National Fabrication Facility, and it's doing the semiconductor fabrication and manufacturing. So we help the master students and the researchers to do the semiconductor sensors in the clean room and in the clean room and fab.
Set up their experiments?
Yeah, it's like experiment.
Right, awesome.
So they have an idea, they do a research, they can they have an idea or maybe they can order. Just
yeah.
order us and we will receive the order and make the sensors to them so they can test it whether their theory is right or is the sensor improved.
Oh, you are the critical person. Hey,
I'm the one who make them, but it's not
Yeah, I know.
Another
My
one.
final year project is something like set up my own experiment and then release a lot of things and contact with a person like you in that like making your pilot and to do that. Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
When do we just start?
I don't know, not yet. Yeah, they're still going to the recruitment process, so,
Are you going to work full time?
3 days a week.
Right.
Yeah, in most of the day.
Wow.
Now,
Right.
Sophia, seeing you're going to work there every day or how many
3
days?
days a week.
3 days a week at Mawson
At
Lakes.
Lakes.
Thank you, Keiko. Good point. Can I'll throw $5 into the kitty. That's called the kitty, isn't it? Anything where everybody puts a bit of money into the kitty for rent, meetup fees, Zoom fees, etc. Thank you. Got a bit of a rush. No worries. Thank you. Coming on long. I'll send everybody the video if you need to leave. So you can catch up later if you want. Get started in a minute.
Are you leaving as well? Why? Just today. Oh, today. Okay. Glad to see you.
Shower. Handy. That thing is weird, height, isn't it? Because I found you turn the temperature down, it's still hot.
Yeah.
The thermostat seems to not be working very well.
Probably the liquid is not.
Here you go. Here you go. Trying to change it. It's gonna make it-
Yeah, Candy, engineer. You need some. Can you
Make
fix
it
it?
work, right? Yeah, probably the liquid
The liquid where?
is that the filter stuff.
In there or in
Cooler.
Snowing in.
I don't really know.
snowing hail?
Recently, I was involved in one project is manufacture of curing making
Oh
pop.
yeah.
And
Wow.
I was surprisingly, I didn't know that's a Chinese-owned project. And when I go outside and they sell the owner are Chinese,
Uh-huh.
and they just show me how to kill a pig.
Whoa.
And just from the pig is lining, waiting in line, and then
Yeah.
they put it down to put a carbon dioxide in to make it sleep.
Is that right?
And then after that, they put it in the side and then to let the blood go,
Yeah.
and then just burn out their hair cells. And then
Yeah.
one of my local colleagues, and he was with me
Colleagues. One of my
one
colleagues.
of my local colleagues, and he was with me for the site inspection as well. And he said, oh, he was surprisingly to see the too much difference between the Chinese way in killing them.
So much difference.
So much difference.
Yeah.
So much difference
Yeah.
in between
Yes.
the Chinese way and then the local way,
Right.
because he was in Thomas Food before. And he saw the way that they do it is put the pig alive and make it stable, and then just like a nozzle and then to put down the nozzle directly in the head,
Oh.
and then just directly cut it up.
Mm.
And
Wow.
then, yeah, that's how they do. They don't
Yeah.
let the blood flow. I was like, okay. That's
So they don't bleed them, but the carbon dioxide puts them to sleep first. That's
I
better,
know
isn't it?
I know the reason now
Yeah.
behind it, because like we don't, as an Asian people, we don't really like the blood tasting pop.
Mhm.
Maybe you too. So the local way in dealing with the pigs, they leave the blood in. So when you taste the pork meat, then you will feel that blood. But Asian people don't like it, so we usually buy pork
Usually.
buy pork from the Asian supermarket rather than the local or with. And then if
Mhm.
that manufacturer is supplier to the Asian supermarket only,
It is, yeah, cultural difference, and which results in a real physical difference.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Interesting cross-cultural experience. All right, let's get back together and welcome to Wei. Is that your pronunciation? I don't know if that's correct, but welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jane.
Jang, is that?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jang. How are you? Thank you. Welcome.
Hi.
All right. Now, we've been talking for the last couple of hours, mainly English, but about this document, and you've been talking about critical thinking and your background with it. But I just want to point out that one, and Mandarin speakers just have a problem, or Chinese background probably. That sounds tricky. Usually, and it's that word in particular. So it's like Asia, usually. And the problem is this, the mistake is usually like this, usually, it's like a work, usually. That's the worst example, usually. And sometimes it's sort of usually. So it's the same mouth position as shh. If you say shh, that sound, that's usually easier. Shh. Just put a voice into it. Usually. All right. So that's most of the English sort of stuff out of the way. If you missed it, I can send you everybody who's in the group, just to remind you, I'm sending emails to you. I record these 3 hours. I put it on YouTube. I send a link to the email group. So if you miss the whole lesson or a bit of it, because you have to leave early or whatever, arrive late, you can watch it or you can re-watch certain parts. Up to you how you use it, or not at all. But please send me your email address. You must be emailed. Don't send it to me now. Send it to me in my email, johnfraserrice@yahoo.com.au, and I will put you in. We've got about 25 or 26 in the group. I'll add you. So if you're interested in staying with the class, you need to do that. Cool. All right, let's move on to the topics. What I noticed interesting about what people were talking about. First point. Maybe I'll put it like this. What is critical thinking for? And this raises a really big and important question. We call it society. So somebody here said, and I thought it was very interesting because I know that they're not here now, they are a really good critical thinker around science. Their job is to look at experiments and research and evaluate the experimental design, the quality of, did they have a correct control group, was the sample size big enough, et cetera, all the statistics around that, and report on that to certain governments, right? That's their job, and they're really good at it, brilliant, and do it a lot in English. So And she said, oh, you know, I was trained for this sort of critical thinking in science and technology. So what we call STEM, isn't it?
Yes.
What's it stand for?
Science, IT, engineering.
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yeah. By the way, it's mathematics. And because it's got this, correct English is maths. And Americans who can't speak proper English say math, right? And all the young people are learning the American incorrect English and they say math, but it is maths. So science, technology, engineering, and maths. Right, and don't just say math because it's easier to say, because maths is hard, isn't it? I know. Okay, so yes, people are being encouraged. We're talking about encouragement and discouragement in your conversation. And overall, and you know, it's sort of predictable, I heard mainly people say I was discouraged in different contexts, like, you know, family context, education. It was like the teacher said this, if you disagreed, it was a problem, you know. So most of us come from those sorts of backgrounds in different degrees. And it's what Mary Heath talked about too in her article, you know. I think we all identify with that to some degree. Those sorts of restrictions, the discouragement, the stifling. However, here's the interesting problem. Where do we see critical thinking arising historically? The main two, the kinds of critical thinking we do today, I'm overgeneralizing here, but you know, a lot of it began with the Greeks 2,500 years ago. So the Golden Age in Athens around 500 BC, where, you know, Socrates in particular, Plato, Aristotle, these guys started to think about thinking. They got to what we call, and it's an important idea in thinking generally, and this Greek, it's interesting, it's Greek, this Greek prefix meta is like above. So, you know, in cartoons like Batman cartoons or Superman or whatever, we draw thinking kind of like that, don't we? With a little cloud. Yeah. All the manga comics, I think, do the same. So another word for thinking is cognition. Cogito ergo sum, famous. I think, therefore I am, Descartes, right? It's worth knowing that, because it's so cogito, I think, ergo, therefore, so I think.
Oh, that's called ergo.
Therefore, yep, ergo, I am. Sum means I am. Cogito ergo sum. So cogito, we get the word. So that very famous Descartes, and we'll probably mention him later. He'll come up in critical thinking. No, I think so. Just I think, therefore, I'm just writing it quickly. I think, therefore, I am. Famous statement. Because he tried doubting everything, and the only thing he couldn't doubt was the fact that he was doubting. Right? So it's thinking. So he came up with that. I think, therefore, I am. It's the basis from where you start. Everything else could be a dream, but I am. The thing I can't doubt is that I'm dreaming. I'm doubting that I'm dreaming or it's real, right? So, okay, so cognition. So let's put meta in front of it. Meta is above. So that's critical thinking is metacognition. So we're thinking about thinking. We're kind of above ourselves, looking down on the way we think or other people think. That's meta level. And I just want to, in class, I've talked about this one too. And it's a general point about learning. Meta-awareness is really, really useful. if you're a musician and you're trying to play the violin and you do it kind of just without thinking of kind of watching yourself playing, oh, my elbow position is not good. It should be like that. That's meta awareness, isn't it? Playing golf, you know, have I got my left arm straight as I stroke through? Where is the point I hit the ball? All that, that's meta awareness. If you just hit 200 balls and don't think, your improvement might be 5%. If you're meta aware, it might be 10 or 20. Okay. Now, I just point that out because it's the same for learning English or any language. If you're aware of yourself as you're speaking grammatically, metacognition, meta awareness, you produce better quality, don't you?
If you're aware of
Indeed, that's exactly right. Meta awareness of everything, any field, and meta awareness of the totality, if we can get it. Now, we could say critical thinking is kind of that top point. It's thinking about everything, isn't it? That's critical thinking. Now, that's where the Greeks sort of began that process, you know, that thinking about thinking in this particular kind of way. Now, the Eastern societies did thinking about thinking in Buddhist way, you know, and ended up in very different kind of results. And that's not really critical thinking, but it's very productive, emotionally and spiritually, perhaps. But it's not what the kind we're talking about. So, you know, the Greeks did this thinking about thinking, and they analyzed all sorts of different arguments and all sorts of ways of arguing badly. They noticed that's not logical, that's not logical, but that's not logical and that's not logical, but they're different. And how are they different? What kind of mistakes are they making? Different kinds of mistakes. So and we can do some work on this. We've done a little bit. A term or so ago, fallacy, you know, bad arguments. There are lots of different kinds of bad arguments. So, okay, so the Greeks began that. Then it was Zara's fault, really. It was the Persians' fault because they helped destroy the Greek Empire. Well, Alexander came, you know, da-da-da. So the Greek Empire collapsed, like all empires do, and a lot of that disappeared. The Romans took it up a bit. They took up more the linguistic side, more than the philosophical. The Romans weren't great philosophers. They were more great speech makers and rhetorical people and things like that. So different culture. So basically, a lot of that disappeared, kind of went underground for a fair while, and it re-emerges in the Renaissance and what we call the Enlightenment. But particularly in the Enlightenment. So we can see the word light in there. So I'm just going to, you know, in terms of looking at history and what we're going to engage in, I think it's always good to understand the historical context because it's going to help us. I'm going to get back to this eventually, all right? But we need to put it in a historical context to understand it, I think. The Enlightenment, around sort of 1600 on to, I'd say, 1800, that period. And this guy, you know, the French were really key in there, a lot of French philosophers, and English, some, and German. You know, they were the big contributors, at least in European thinking. And they started to get back to this thinking about thinking. There was this regrowth. So the Renaissance was a bit earlier. And if we look at that word, nace, to be born, the rebirth of the classical world. What had happened in the meantime? The Greeks had come, the Romans had come, the Roman Empire collapsed, the Germanic tribes had come in, and the level of that kind of learning had dropped enormously. And sort of the society became very religious during the Middle Ages. And in the church, it was my way or the highway. Or actually, in the church at that time, it was my way or that's right, we're not the highway, we take you down the village road to the square and we burn you. Right? Yeah. So Renaissance begins in the 1400s, really, in Italy, and then moves around Europe, goes to the north. But then later we have the Enlightenment. But that had to happen first because it's the rediscovery of especially Greek culture and Roman culture. And interestingly, a lot of it was because the Islamic world had got those texts and preserved them, and they disappeared in Europe altogether. And the Islamic world, people then went to the Islamic world, these traders in Venice and Spain, and brought it back in. So it's actually interesting how that happened. But so we had that and as a foundation, then this. Now, the Enlightenment light. So the idea, this is where we get modernism. Now, the notion of modernism is, the belief in science in particular, and rational thought, and metacognition, thinking about thinking, and that this very optimistic idea that if we do that thoroughly, science is going to benefit humans, and this is the way we progress. So later, that has been more recently in the last half of last century, especially, probably 50s on, has been questioned by some. Modernism, we get postmodernism, people who criticize modernism. We'll talk about that another day. But modernism, the growth of science, etc. So let's come up here. All right, that's the sort of historical beginnings of modern science and technology and engineering and maths. It does go back to this period, and especially the Enlightenment. Now, here's the point. Why does it happen? Why does it happen here? And why does it happen here? Why didn't it happen in the 13th century or the 9th? Or maybe why didn't it happen at all and it's going to happen in 300 years? Why this time? And I think an important element of critical thinking is often kind of left out of this one anyway, and this is partly, the point of the group, is historical and social critical thinking. We have to ask this meta question, looking above, why did it happen then? And my suggestion to you is capitalism. Is why? Because if we go back to Renaissance, what began that? The trading in the Mediterranean of the Italian peninsula, Venice in particular, the Venetian Empire, Florence, Milan, etc. These cities got very wealthy from trade, right? And then rediscovered the arts and the sciences and so on, but it came out of capitalism, and it came out of a particular kind. And I'm going to write the word merchant because merchant, a trader, aren't they? Traders. And the Venetians were great traders, and one of their main forms of trade or sources was actually China and the Silk Road, right? So, and of course, lots of people traded through there, Persia, etc. The Arabic traders. But so that's the merchants were doing that, and I'm just going to write the adjective because I want to use it. I want to use it quite a lot. Mercantile. So mercantile capitalism. You've got 1 million ducats. That was the currency of Venice. You put that into some 5 ships. You sail them to Lebanon. You fill them up with the silk from China. You bring it back. You don't expect $1 million, 1 million ducats, do you? You expect 2 million or 1.5 or whatever. So it's the process of what we call capital accumulation. And with that 1.5, you go and buy another ship, and you send 6 ships this time, get a bigger profit. Then you send 8 ships, and then you send 10, and you build your company. And that accumulation, capital accumulation. Okay, so with that wealth, you rediscover art, sciences, etc. Now, the same thing is happening 1600 to 1800. We get mercantile capitalism, but then you get another thing. In England, you get industrial capitalism. And we're living with that one today. And what happens there is a big difference. In mercantile capitalism, things are bought and sold, and people accumulate. In industrial capitalism, you need workers. So you buy people. They're not slaves. That's an earlier system. But you buy someone for a day, you know, a wage or a week or a fortnight or whatever contract is signed. But you buy them for some time. You buy their labor power. And the human is attached to the labor power. You don't actually buy the person, but you buy the labor power. The human is attached to that, so the person has to go where the market says, okay? And it accumulates the same way, doesn't it? So you're making, I don't know, in the old days, you're making chairs. So you're going to sell chairs and then you're going to invest more from that profit and make more chairs the next time and more chairs because you keep reinvesting. And if you don't do that and you don't make, okay, here's the key point. Technology comes along. You've got 5 chair makers in London. Somebody, an engineer, a STEM person, thinks, oh, this is a really good way of cutting the wood. That's going to halve the amount of time to make the wood for my chairs. They introduce that. What do the other people in London have to do? They've got to adopt the same thing, don't they? So first of all, this guy's going to do it and he's going to expand. The others are going to realize, one guy too late, he commercially, he's dead. The others get that technology and maybe they think, oh, gee, I need an engineer too to make me something even better, right? So we get this race. And what's at the basis of it is an economic race and competition. And what do we need to win that competition? We need STEM. We need good science, we need good technology, and especially, you know, all of that, and mathematics, and ultimately it's applied to engineering. That's the key. That one is the application of it for industrial capitalism. Now, when you get a society that's the economics of that soon spread. Why does it spread? Because that guy with the special cutter, he's selling cheaper chairs, isn't he? Everyone wants to buy those. So everybody in London buys those ones and not the other ones. That guy gets bigger. Other people copy it. It spreads, right? So the mechanism, the technology spreads, but also the economic method spreads. If you're an old guy making chairs at home, I don't know what I said. The economic spread, the economic system, I'm not sure. Yeah. If you're an old grandpa kind of making chairs, you know, like your grandpa did, you know, and you're doing it the slow way in some town just outside London, and you try to sell that chair because you put in 100 hours of labor, but the new cutting mechanism made it only 20 hours of labor. Is anyone going to buy your chairs for the price you want? They're not. So you go out of business. Maybe you're quite good at making chairs, so you have to move to London and become a chair maker with this new technology. So people get sucked into city. Now, what was interesting is just around the group, lots of people were talking about how they came from completely rural areas or slightly rural, and you've ended up in the city. I mean, at least everybody in this classroom is in the city, and most people on Zoom. So urbanization is driven by capitalism. Capitalism destroys old ways of making things in the countryside because of that process, and people get sucked into the city. You know, they just have to leave and look for that same kind of work, but with higher technology. I mean, I'm overgeneralizing, and there are lots and lots of millions of exceptions, but that's the, you know, tendency of history. My point is this: we now live in this product of these few hundred years. So we have a society that, you know, the bosses, you open things called, what are they called? Employments, I've talked about them before. The key competencies, they used to be called. The survey of employers in Australia, the groups of employment skills, you know, and one of the 8 of them, and one of them is critical thinking. So employers want critical thinking. I mentioned that last week. Because employers want it, they're capitalists, right? That's the system we're in. Universities have to train people to meet industry. So universities want critical thinking too. What's it driven by? Mainly economics. But, you know, those employers want it. What do they want? They want, you know, people who can think creatively with these kinds of ideas, because they want, you know, better technologies, or they want people. It's not just technology that can improve your competition. If you can get a person creative with management, and they say, let's rearrange the workplace like this, you go there and you partner up there with that person, you know, and we get double the productivity. That, with no change in technology, that will beat a competitor as well, won't it? So it's not just purely STEM. It's like psychology and management, and people go to the Harvard School of Management or do their MBA, you know, and they learn those forms of criticality. So technology and management, those two things improve productivity and drive capitalism. That is why, you know, universities do it, and that's why we get this one. And a long explanation of the point. You know, one person said, I was trained very well, and they're very, very good at this. Science and technical critical thinking. And that may be your situation as well, because a number of people here, not everyone, has a science base. So you've been engaged in that kind of criticality, but here's the problem. Capitalism likes that kind of criticality because it improves the competitiveness. But this second one, the social critical thinking, like, all right, we're in this society. Is this the best kind of society? What other kind of societies can we imagine? I think Mary Heath mentioned imagining different things. You know, maybe we could, what about morals and morality? What's the best way we should run a society morally? That's what that is about. What about, is this culture got the right values? Or maybe we should look at our assumptions and investigate them about how we speak about women, or how we treat them, just as an example, all right? Or how we think about classes, or how we think about Indigenous people, you know, so many questions. All of that can be a problem for the people who are, you know, at the top of the system. The people at the top of any system, I would say, want to keep the system that way. Right? If you're wealthy and powerful from that system, you want to keep it that way. And so a certain percentage of that wealth and power is used, and sometimes unconsciously. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy. This is just a systemic process. But, you know, they tend to favour certain kinds of values, certain ways of thinking. They will talk about those things publicly, very positively. They'll donate money to them. They'll support them politically, and they won't support other things that are more critical. So we end up with dominant institutions and dominant ideas. Okay. So now there is some of this. You know, basically it's humanities. The humanities of various, we have to say the humanities. So history, for example, philosophy, cultural studies of various kinds, anthropology, I'll just put anthro, gender studies, film studies, looking at film and looking at the attitudes behind, in literary studies can become quite critical. You could, with literature studies, which that's what I did, you can just look purely at the art. That's not necessarily very socially critical, but if you start to look at the values and the ideas in the stuff, in the literature, that sometimes can, you think, why did that society produce that kind of idea, or how are they being critical of society, etc. So we get the humanities, and that is critical thinking in that area, sure. But here's a question. What is happening in the last 40 years as a global tendency with these two things? The question is, one thing I'd like to do in here a lot is talk about these broad social trends and get us very meta-aware of the society we're in. And that's both local Australia, planet, and maybe your local area too. Culture if you're on Zoom from overseas, or still in contact with your native culture. So the question is, globally, there's a trend in relation to these two kinds of critical thinking. Which one is growing and which one is shrinking? Yeah, this one is growing, definitely. More and more, certainly even just in schools, even that acronym STEM, it's only appeared in the last 10 to 15 years. So just the appearance of a word can tell you about the culture, right? So that word appears as a package. And schools start to talk about, we must teach more and more STEM. Why? Because countries, as capitalist units, they have to compete, And of course, Australia never stops talking about China. Oh, China's, developing. We need to compete, We need to get better technology because China's getting into this and that, and we'll get beaten, blah, blah, So educational systems, dominant forces, businesses want a lot of STEM for national competitiveness. Makes a lot of sense. And these things are important. I'm not dissing them. Remember that word, the slang? Dissing them. I'm not projecting, insulting them. We need that stuff, sure. That's the basis of the Enlightenment, This is very progressive and important and positive stuff. However, this, globally, at least in Western countries, is being reduced.
Unfortunately, not just in this country.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
one of the reasons. Can you speak up, Zara, so Zoomers can hear?
One of the most important reasons for that, I think, is because of science and technology that we have these days. There were times when people weren't happy with government. They could stand and talk. And the worst thing the government could do, why, for example, even physically attacking them, it was one gun and one shot. But now, because of the science and technology and the guns and equipment and the dictatorship governments have all around the world, they easily can target it, a big group of people at a very short time, or control them by all the technology that exists at the moment. So people, even when they talk in their own house with some people or on the phone, they can be tracked down. So I think the science helped the capitalism to actually control the other part of the critical thinking
Right, that's an interesting point. Yes, right. So tools, technological tools for suppression and control. Yeah, of that is true. So it's not just for industry; it's for what we call the state. The state's use, so army, police force, etc. The state and the apparatus to control. Yeah, good point. That is another reason why dominant classes, encourage this. But just on a money level, in Western countries who call themselves democratic, you start bringing the army in, or controlling people like that. Oh, we heard you on the mobile phone talking about this, disappear. Okay, that's not going on. It's a more subtle, indirect form, but it is still, shaping. Over the last 40 years, there's been less and less money put into these areas of university. It's very well known and commented on throughout academia. Many academics have lost their jobs. A lot of these things have shrunk. Go around Australian universities and, philosophy departments, not all of them, but some have disappeared here. Some history departments, gender studies is gone there, film studies is gone there. It's all just disappearing slowly. The United Kingdom is certainly going through that, and the United States is certainly going through that. Right? So we're in this. Overall, we're in a trend towards the right. So the right tends to, want to preserve the system. So we have a lot of that, and you can get right-wing thinkers here, but generally these tend to encourage open questioning of the dominant system, and there's a left tendency, I'd say, toward in there. And even if it's not left, obviously left, it's openly, it's open and it's critical. So that slowly has been reduced.
Yeah, that's the reality is because when I'm choosing my major in my uni, and my parents don't encourage me to learn that majors because it's not easy to find a job. Well, I'm
true.
Engineering is plenty of job opportunities for engineers.
That is true, actually. So it's not just funding at universities, but broader funding. Like, say, the last 10 years, the funding of the arts generally in Australia has reduced. The government funding of media, like the government ABC, has been cut over the last 20 years in particular. So, the ABC is one of the things that I'd like to do in the course is look at the better quality sources of information, and a lot of those have been restricted or choked or stifled, So yes, we've got this dominant trend of this. So critical thinking and looking at an experiment, what's good about it, what's wrong, where's the faults, how do we improve it? Obviously, that's very important. We're going to do an experiment on a new drug for a year. We want to think really carefully at the beginning, don't we, about exactly how we design that experiment. Have we got people equally matched for their backgrounds? If we don't, we're looking for apples and oranges, things like that, So big emphasis on that, but less and less on this. So in here, what I'd like to do is, sure, we'll venture into here, but, let's try and correct the balance a bit and explore that. So kind of a meta cognition about social issues in particular, and some about this, because some of these techniques of thinking are very useful here. Yeah.
But I think part of the reason why number one become dominant is like you're using the technology that you will increase the world and people can see there is a big progress. They have a very awesome technologies skills, but when you do the society stuff, it's a prolonged interest, but it's underneath. It's not that obvious to be observed.
True. Yeah, I mean, just a point here, that technology and that improved technology, you're right, has made it's made things cheaper. doesn't it? That's through capitalist competition. The average chair, grandpa doesn't make it anymore. You know, it costs you $10 at IKEA. And yeah, those things have kept populations kind of happy, even though, so absolute wealth has risen, relative wealth. So those rich people owning the chair factory have gone up into the stratosphere somewhere, especially in the last 40 years. But the average person as well has risen because of the efficiency of producing chairs and all the basics. So in a sense, that softens the criticism from below. Yeah.
I think that the reason actually people notice more when something changes in science or technology is not, if that's one of the things, definitely is that they
Remember,
can
speak up, Zara. So
yeah, definitely they can see it. It's one aspect. But the most important aspect, in my opinion, is that the capitalism wants people to notice and see, so they constantly have advertisement and other things and encourage people to actually involve in this kind of, and just know about everything comes out. But when it's going to, for example, humanities, cultural and art, we don't see that reflection at TV, news. We don't see that everyday lives. What happened in, for example, Afghanistan is absolute disaster.
Yeah.
But how much you see of it when you compare it with very unnecessary and not important news and other things going on every day. Completely meaningless news when you are looking. Oh, today, for example, a puppy being saved from this and that. I was like, are you kidding me? Afghanistan, they are going door to door and kill a pregnant 8 months pregnant woman in front of the children's eyes, and you're talking about saving the puppy. And it's because they want you to see it. They don't want you to see the other aspects and the effect they actually focusing less on humanity and the effect of it on the human being. They just don't want you to notice and see.
That is certainly true of, and we have to distinguish, you know, a lot of capitalism, like media itself is a capitalist industry, isn't it? And, you know, Channel 7, for example, gets, I don't know, 5 million views a night. And Harvey Norman, Mr. Harvey Norman, wants to advertise the latest computer, that space to sell. So that's what media is doing. It's looking, you know, for markets. But government media is a little bit different. Doesn't operate like that. So, but your capitalist media tends not, to go into this territory because, you know, Harvey Norman and those others, Channel 7 basically has to do what the wealthy people who can afford advertising want. I'm generalising, but overall, those commercial forms of media are very conservative by definition of their place in the economy there. Government media can be very controlled sometimes and non-critical. Sometimes you can have government media that's more independent and open. And luckily in Australia, it is changing. It is changing for the worse, but because of the cuts to the ABC and because of conscious, from John Howard on, right-wing management of the ABC. Because John Howard said, Liberals have said for years, the ABC is left-wing. If you analyse the articles, they're actually statistically quite balanced, but from the right, they see it as left, and they want to change it. And it's coming up with all of this. It's still coming up with all of this. Turn on the ABC. This is why I want to encourage you, you know, as one source, not necessarily just the only or the best, but it's good. And we can talk. I'd like to talk about the programs in the ABC and which ones are kind of where politically. Don't take my word for it. Go and have a listen. You know, that is one of our most important resources for open and informed thinking, and it is getting shaped. It's getting shaped a lot. So again, as thinkers about the society we live in, we need to understand that. One of the best programs, and we need to do a little, you know, half a lesson on it, or a lesson, Media Watch, and it's on the ABC. It's just 20 minutes, half an hour, a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. Every week they look at what's going on in the media and doing exactly the sort of thing you're talking about. So looking at the puppy stories and, you know, instead of what's really happening, and look at how the media are distorting things or even lying or, you know, making serious errors. That stuff's very interesting, and it's a very good program to put into your weekly critical thinking diet. And you can start, you know, the ABC, just use, if you want to start even looking at it right now, just on your computer or your phone, iView, get up iView and look at Media Watch. We will look at least one program and look at how the media is feeding, if we like, feeding the masses with the term that occurred to me, the Romans invented it, bread and circuses. So the crowd, the common people in Rome, you want to control them because occasionally there are upsurges and riots. And you keep them happy with bread, so a little bit of absolute wealth, and entertainment, circuses. Get a few gladiators to kill each other in the Colosseum, yay. You know, today we have Port Adelaide versus Geelong, right? Same deal, just a bit softer. But ultimately, bread and circuses. Today we could say Harvey Norman and sport.
Exactly.
You know, whatever.
Here we have Pies and AFL.
Yeah, exactly. Right, we're close to an end. And that was really coming out of just what one person talked about. But I think it was a really important point that I wanted to make this distinction early on about different kinds of critical thinking. And all this stuff I'm saying here, I feel like I'm overgeneralizing, you know, painting black and white. All of what I've said, there are, you know, as I said, millions of exceptions to what I've said. And it's not black and white like this, but I'm trying to describe broad tendencies. I think it's very important that from that meta awareness point, we see the tendencies, and then we can make sense of the exceptions and things that fit the rule, etc. It's like when you learn English grammar, isn't it? The broad rules, you've got to get them in place. Then you see the landscape of the language. Then you can start focusing on the detail. But getting that meta view to begin. And a lot of it, I hope you can see how history and actually economics, like the basic material production that people are engaged in, that's what's important. And that's what produces dominant classes, the people who are better and smarter at controlling production. And ultimately, those people tend to create the dominant ideas. You know, and we need to look at how those ideas dominate. And there are shifts. History is never static. It's moving, isn't it? And capitalism did an important thing in the early to mid 70s, 1975. It invented neoliberalism. And neoliberalism basically emphasized that and cut that. And we're still in the neoliberal period. And again, meta criticality. Why did capitalism do that? Well, the profit rate was dropping. There was a wonderful, beautiful profit rate after World War II because they had to rebuild Europe and Japan. And when you have to do that, you stimulate economies. There was a good almost 30 years of boom. But by the late 60s, the profit rate was starting to fall. How do we solve that? We've got to weaken the unions, get factories into the third world cheap. We've got to privatise. We've got to put things out just purely in the market. We've got to cut government spending because we don't want to get taxed. Now, all of those things, we as a capitalist, we need to do those things. But in doing those things, we don't want a lot of talk about it. We want to shut down the discussion about that. That process is what's gone on. About half, for example, Australia, half the population were in unions. Now it's 14%. And go around the world, you'll find similar figures. You know, so that shutting down of those institutions of the working class and the leftward movement of universities in the 60s and civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement. You know, all that talk and all that humanities chat amongst what we call the chattering class, all that stuff was hostile to the neoliberal project. And overall, there's been a shutdown. And it's been a slow and protracted, stretched out. So in many cases, it's invisible to the average person. And of course, that makes it easier, doesn't it? If you send all the troops into the university and you pull out all the lecturers who are, you know, talking all the ratbag stuff, then you get demonstrations against it. But if you just cut the funding and that person, you don't renew their contract, you put conservative management in, you run universities like corporations, the CEOs get $1.5 million. Check out the average wage of the CEOs in Australia. They're over $1 million, up to 1.5. So you get CEOs who run universities like they run Qantas or Harvey Norman, like literally. They restructure them and they get rid of, you know, a lot of that. That is what's happening. That's the landscape. And it is driven, again, by economics in history. It's ultimately driven by deep structural changes in capitalism that then reshape institutions, which reshape thinking, which reshape culture. Right? This is stuff we need to, if we really want to be meta understanding. I mean, you know, it's not just my interpretation, there's a whole layer of people who are interpreting, you know, the last 4 decades, last half century this way. We need to understand that, but you know, as we get into critical thinking, we need the totality. I want to emphasize always good critical thinking. Ultimately, it's a Hegelian dialectical notion from German philosophy, the totality. Always keep your eye on the totality in the context of things. And you're this little microbe or molecule in the middle. Right? We want to get that big vision, like of what's the trends in the world. And when we talk about, you know, when we watch one program on Media Watch, then we can possibly relate it to this big picture that I'm talking about. You'll get much more out of the quality of analysis if we get an understanding of this big picture. Right? Yeah, so all of what I've been talking about is that kind of stuff, isn't it? Social criticality. We need to get an understanding of that landscape. All right, so we're over time. That's, I hope, whetted your appetite for more. We'll keep going with those questions next week, and I've still got, yeah, a few notes of interesting ideas that people talked about. So have a read of the rest of the article. I don't know how, I think we'll still be on these questions probably next week. You don't need to read the rest. Let's stay where we are. Just have a think, those questions, have a think and get some notes for discussion about, there's questions about the sources, about who the critical thinkers are in her culture. How about you? What critical thinkers do you know of? What sources here and in native countries and elsewhere in other parts of the world? Have a look at her examples. Yeah, just read those questions and have a think and take some notes. That's on the Facebook group as a document. Yeah. Cool. We'll see you later. If anybody is not in the Facebook group yet, somebody on Zoom, you need to email me. So stay there and I'll send you my email. Otherwise, humans. See you later.
See you. Thank you.
We'll,
thank you very much. See you later.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.
If you want to hang around for any questions, please do. Otherwise, we'll catch you later. Ciao, guys. See you, Cecilia.
Bye, John. Oh, I
Ciao.
have to give you $5.
Oh yeah, if we can chuck $5 in the kitty, that would be useful. Thank you. Just in the bucket. Thank you. Cool. Okay, ciao, Galina. Now, Jane, did you need to send you in?
Good night, everybody.
See you, Heinz.
Hi, John. Could
Yes,
you
hi, Jane.
let me know
Yeah.
your
Email?
email address?
Yeah. I'm just putting it in chat for you.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure you got it because if I close everything down, John Fraser Rice, I think that's it.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So it should be John. I'm just so small, the writing. Oh,
John.
there, that's better. Yeah, that's correct.
Yep.
Fraser, and it's got a double R because Fraser and then Rice at yahoo.com.au. If you send me your an email, Jane, then
Yep.
I will put you in the email group. You'll get the video. And you need to join the Facebook group because that's also where I send documents, and I'll send that to you right now.
Okay. Sorry, I was late because
No
I
problem.
finished at 5.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
your
fine.
lesson,
Zoom
yeah.
is fine. Now that's a long one. It's probably best to just cut and paste that. Can you cut and paste that into your computer?
Yeah.
Into Facebook, and then you'll get the group, and then pretty much every week I put what we're doing in a comment or document
cool.
there. Yeah.
All right.
The other thing
Thank
is,
you
if
so
you
much.
send me,
Yep.
have you got that link?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Oh, good. All right. Cool. All right. I'll send you the video and any other updates through that.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Email. Okay. No worries. Ciao.
Bye.